We're going to be using the Photoshop timeline to create a short animation that we're going to export as an animated GIF for use on screens, the web, etc. It's a quick one, should be fun. Let's have a look at it. We're going to need to utilize the Photoshop timeline, as I said, which we'll find under our window menu item, and we can just pull up our timeline. You can see I've done a bit of work in the timeline already and created this little animation, which I'll just run through. And you can see that Photoshop is stepping through those frames that I've created. And as it's playing through those frames, it's showing the different layers that I've created in my layers palette. Alright, so I'll just stop that and we'll make a new document and we'll create our own. So if you want to make a document that's 600 by 600 pixels, resolution of 72 RGB, and we'll go ahead and put this together, and we'll kind of be improvising along the way, but the general process is something that I want you to kind of take on board for your own work. I'm going to start by setting up my kind of layers, and we had kind of a background color, which was a light blue, I think. So I've made a solid. And now I'm going to make some text, I think, just some point text using the text tool. I've already got a font that I'm happy to use at about 200 points. Less than 200 actually. 180. And that looks good to me. Just position it with the pointer tool, and I'll give it a color. And it was just a kind of a darker blue color, something like that. I'm sure that you will come up with something more interesting than this in your piece. Okay, so there's kind of two main elements. Now I'm going to set about kind of creating some artwork for each of the frames. And it'll be up to you how many frames you're going to create for your animation. Anywhere between kind of 6 and 12, or maybe a bit more. But you'll need a few frames to kind of get that movement and make it look like your piece of text has some life to it. So we create the animation in the Photoshop timeline, as I pointed out before. You can get that under Window Timeline, and we're going to create a frame animation. Now you can create two different types of animations in Photoshop. We're going to look at creating a frame by frame animation. So we'll select create frame animation, and we'll make our first frame. So click on that little button there. That's our first frame in our animation. Alright, so we've got one frame in there. We'll go ahead and we'll make some artwork for the subsequent frames. So I'm just going to duplicate that text, and I'm going to rasterize it, and I'll rename that one because I want to kind of modify it a bit, modify the pixels in that layer a little bit. So that's my first frame, or artwork for my first frame. I'm going to make another one. Just duplicated that, And this one here, I'm going to start the kind of cracking process. So I've got my polygon lasso, and I don't know, I can kind of improvise here, but I'm going to make my first kind of incision across this graphics here. If I hit Command T on the keyboard, I could kind of modify that selection I've made and start cracking this bit of artwork. Oops. All right. Make another piece of artwork for my next frame. I haven't started building the frames out yet, so I'm just getting the artwork ready to go. And we'll put maybe 2 cracks in this frame. Command T to modify that. And Command T again. So that's looking pretty cracked, and I might just put one more layer, or create one more layer of that cracked type to really emphasize the destruction of our word. And yeah, feel free to modify this for your own, go in your own direction with it. How does that look? Kind of cool. So we're going to move through these frames to create that cracked animation, which I think is looking good so far. I do want to create a crack in the background as well, so I might make a bit of artwork for that. That's going to be kind of like a sort of a lightning bolt running through behind the typography. So let's start with I'm just using the polygon lasso again. Going to make a lightning bolt sort of shape there, and I'll create a solid color, just some graphics in behind there. I think a light blue looks all right. I'll make a few of those, make another one that's a little bit bigger. Slight variation. And turn that into a solid color as well. Maybe one more. And again, kind of just varying the shape. Once I've made that selection, create another solid color and rename it. Alright, so now we've got quite a bit of artwork that we can play with, so we can kind of turn these layers on and create that animation. Might just hide my original text, won't use that. I'll use these graphics that I've made, these cracking graphics. Okay, so for our first frame, we're going to have this cracked one layer on, and we'll oops, kind of our record button is just overlaying my timeline a bit there. I'm going to drag up the timeline a bit. Sorry, I've just had to adjust my Photoshop frame there so I can adjust my timeline frames. Anyway, here's my first frame. I'm going to have that frame display for 0.1 of a second, so quite a quick frame. And as you can see there, you can vary the length of your frames depending on what you want to do. We're going to loop our animation forever. It's an animated GIF, and we've got some player controls along the bottom here, so we can step through our animation as we're making it. So that's going to be our first frame. Let's add on another frame. So this is our second frame. And in your frames, you can actually modify the position of your layers. So I'm just going to create a little bit of kind of a bit of a wobble to our text with a couple of frames. So frame 1, frame 2, and we'll go, there's it playing back. And we'll add another frame and maybe position it down there. So we've got a little bit more of a random movement, maybe even another one. Just nudge it down there, let's see what that looks like. So that's kind of a little bit of animation. And that's now we'll bring in those cracks, and I'll turn off that layer and bring this layer in, and you can see that it's kind of recording that toggling on and off of those layers. So we'll make our 6th frame, we'll move to crack 3. And our 7th frame, move to crack 4. Alright, so that's really good. I want to also add in these lightning bolts in the back. So the biggest lightning bolt kind of want to add here, I reckon. And then, stepping back, I'll add those lightning bolts in over those 1, 2, 3 frames. And then now that that's kind of reached its pinnacle, I suppose, I'll wind it back. I'll add an 8th frame, and we'll go back to crack number 3, back to the second lightning bolt. I'm just kind of reversing the animation. Finally, back to our original text, turn that off, and we'll finish up with another frame here at the end, and we'll just move that just to create an extra bit of kind of jiggle at the end there. So let's play that through, and that hopefully can loop. And you can see our animation fully complete at this point. We've created some artwork in our layers panel, and we've created a series of frames to kind of display that artwork in sequence, kind of manipulating the layers as you move through the frames and turning layers on and off to create that finished animated effect. So good luck with your version of this fun little project.